Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Downtown Den podcast. I'm delighted today to be putting the spotlight on one of our strategic partners, and that's PJ Livesey. I've got Georgina with me from that particular company. Tell me about PJ Livesey, Georgina. Tell me about your role within it.
Okay, well, Frank, it's great to be here, so thank you. My name is Georgina Lynch, Managing Director of the PJ Livesey Group. We are a heritage and brownfield developer, so we take our country's historic buildings and a lot of institutional sites and deliver new homes. We have been established now for 45 years. We've taken over 200 of these heritage buildings and delivered over 4,500 new homes. It's a family business, so this has been part of my childhood. I've spent literally exploring and getting into loads of trouble in these buildings. And that childhood sort of benchmark is now left to a real passion to see a real opportunity that we've got to unlock in what this country has, these unused buildings, and how we need to bring them back to life.
And at Downtown in Business, we've been working in partnership with you on this fabulous campaign.
Yes.
Unlocking heritage for housing. So tell me a bit more about that.
Yeah. Heritage housing came about unlocking this opportunity because I see so many times, I think Historic England said there's 670,000 homes that could be delivered from, all these unused heritage buildings. So I started really looking at this more and more and constantly hearing about a housing shortage, 176,000 children in still not with a home. It's just, and then I'm thinking, well, hold on, we've got these incredible buildings in all of our regions that are just sat rotting away. And it was coming more from a delivery perspective, what needs to be done differently with attitude change and some practical steps to make this a very serious contender. And I'd say an untapped opportunity to be really part of housing delivery.
Yeah, I think it needs to be seen as part of the solution to the housing crisis. But I think also we talk more now, don't we, when we look at regeneration projects and schemes about placemaking. And of course, a lot of these buildings are at the heart of their communities. And what I've been really impressed about when I've been listening to you, Georgina, and your colleagues, is the way in which you've been able to enable those buildings to be brought back into use in a way that is really supported by those communities that are affected by that.
Hugely so. I think that's what makes it so worthwhile, because these buildings are normally, in many cases, their community's identity. You know, it's the impact it has on that community when these buildings come back in. And many of the buildings we do are, let's say, they're hospitals or they're schools. And we find that we sometimes have people that used to work there 50, 60 years ago. They want to come back and see these places brought back to life. And you see the difference that makes when they see these buildings being loved again and those homes being brought back in. And all generations actually then, new generations coming in to take them forward for the future as well.
Yeah. And people will be listening to this thinking, fantastic, this is the silver bullet, because 670,000 homes potentially. We've got a lack of resource that we know central and local government are complaining about, and we understand why. And so here we have an untapped resource. Must be dead simple to just turn this around. Tell us what the challenges are.
Okay, well, I wish it was. And unfortunately, with all these opportunities, there are some challenges. But maybe let's start by looking at some of the most obvious opportunities. And one is making sure that the procurement, many, particularly of our publicly owned assets, there's so many examples, Frank, of these buildings going into the wrong hands. And we need to really stop and recognise that. We have done a report on just 15 sites that we looked at over the last 20 years. We bid on, we weren't successful. And we wanted to see those brought back, but they weren't. They're still landlocked, and they've now deteriorated even further. And these could have delivered thousands of new homes. So that procurement process is really important. It's not just about the highest bidder. It's about getting in the right
homes.
So that's number one.
Yeah.
And I think another point is that real collaborative approach. From a developer's side, we need to make sure that they're viable. And that's a big challenge with these buildings. You've got to attract investors, make sure the capital stack works. And to do that, you need to also ensure that you know where those risks are and you can really, really understand that challenge of the building. On the other side, you've got to then, there's going to be the heritage part where people are going to want to protect the significance. So you need to combine those together, have those really challenging or productive conversations early and understand if there is a commitment to protect certain parts of heritage, but to protect delivery, that can be locked down early on to then ensure then throughout that process, it is assisting and helping that delivery. But I think the big one is the de-risk factor. And that is getting all those problems on the table first, understanding the cost, and then how those can be managed and what everyone's able to pull and push with to make it work.
Do you think there's also a challenge? Certainly, this struck me when I was reading the report about agencies and the heritage lobby to an extent as well, being a little bit more pragmatic in their approach when it comes to refurbishing and regenerating these buildings, because there can often be a blockage simply because somebody's objecting to a particular change.
Huge. And I think there seems to be more roadblocks when it comes to heritage, and that's where that constraint, or there's that eye rolling, oh, let's look at something a lot more easier like new build. And that's why that attitude change is really important. And if there's a commitment to deliver this, for example, for housing, that commitment has to then be really handheld all the way through to ensure it can actually happen, as opposed to constantly looking because it's heritage, we're going to find a reason why not to make it happen.
When we've been having conversations with various agencies, local government leaders and so on, it struck me that there's different approaches in different places. And there's some good examples, good practice, as well as some of those challenging conversations that you've referenced. Tell me what good looks like. Tell me about a project that PJ Livesey have been able to deliver where, I'm not suggesting it's been seamless, but where it's been easier.
Yeah. I'd say Lancaster Moor was a really good example of that. And that was a collaboration, local authority, Homes England, and there was ourselves and another PLC developer. So there was a real roundtable approach. This building had been vacant for years, 20 years. It had been really, no one saw there was any hope left. And then there was let's say what we can do. And from that collaboration, which I think is the key here, around the table from a funding, how to de-risk. There was obviously the enabling of all the new build in the surrounding area. Obviously, Historic England played a key role in that. Once all those collaborative teams came together, we found a very successful site, to the extent where we had people queuing, wanting to live there. Wow. There was, at the time, there was funding from Homes England where all that funding was paid back, and actually returns made from Homes England, because the prices obviously became a lot more achievable than people underestimated at the time. And now it is just a beautiful building that's lifted not just the area and those living there, but also the surrounding area, and made it a really special site. So I'd say that's a really positive example there of where it's worked.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me just go back to your procurement point, though, because procurement is an issue that government have been frustrated by for, well, this one for 2 years. But prior to that, the previous Conservative government ministers used to say to me, procurement drives me mad.
Yes.
And it seems to me that we're getting the priorities of procurement all wrong. As you rightly said, Georgina, often it's led by price. It needs to be led by delivery, doesn't it?
Correct.
That's where we need to be going to.
So important. It is delivery, because if we're very honest and we look at where what needs to be done to de-risk, there is a cost to that. And at the moment, that is not looked at enough. So the ones that do know what to look for are probably not the highest bidder, but they're the most realistic. And they're seeing it may need grant support. It may need that 106. Everything needs to be looked at, but very realistically. If you look at the best price, more often than not, I can see now that those will not be delivered.
Now, we've both been talking to Homes England,
yes,
and I think there is a genuine appetite from their perspective to get behind this agenda.
Absolutely.
And to start to create those collaborative approaches that we know are so important as far as this is concerned. Just tell me how we can start to perhaps see a more comprehensive approach. Who are the sort of people that we need to be talking to immediately when these projects start to get put together? Because again, through some of the events that we've done with you guys, sometimes the project motor and all of a sudden someone from highways will make an objection, or somebody from... So we need to sort of try and make sure that from the get-go, we've got the right team in place to drive these things forward.
Correct. The most important to me is early conversation with Historic England, because as a statutory body with a heritage site, they are the ones that will understand what the heritage significance is, and if there is an ability to take that building for delivering that final use, let's say for housing. So if we are wanting to look where windows can be replaced, what can happen to the roof slates, all those questions, and can it deliver the right size homes, you have to have that with Historic England first, because there's no point going to battle if the significance of the building is too extreme to allow that to happen. But in many cases, I believe there's a real understanding from Historic England that housing should be playing a massive part from this. So if that can happen from day one, that needs to be locked in. Then it's really looking from Homes England about that whole funding piece as well, with other investors, to make sure that can work. And then the messaging we need to get out there is local authorities. If that endorsement's been given, particularly from Historic England, then through planning, we have to really get behind that. And it's how we can change that mindset and understand there's only a finite amount of pot there, but let's be sensible with that. And let's think about that housing delivery as being a key criteria where we've all got to compromise to allow that to happen.
The government have set itself this target of 1.5 million homes to be delivered by the end of this Parliament.
Yes.
I'd just say to Andy Burnham, good luck with that. But I still think that we should be really ambitious as far as that target is concerned. And we know that to a point, you could say, well, new build is going to be easier to deliver in terms of planning processes. We've got these companies such as Starship, who we deal with now, with LMC and all that sort of thing. But for me, the reason why this agenda is important isn't simply about the delivery of homes. That obviously is crucial. But it is about that point I made earlier. We've got these beautiful buildings in towns, in cities, on high streets that people really care about, literally going to rack and ruin. And they're not going to be able to be saved forever, Georgina. No. So for me, this is a really urgent agenda item, isn't it? We need to be getting on with this.
It's huge. And there's two parts of that. First of all, the difference heritage can make in terms of well-being, in terms of identity, and that whole community is massive. So we can't underestimate a home is so important, but it's also that what that home makes you feel like. And heritage will always bring something that none of us can ever do anymore, because we'll never do what the Victorians did. So that's key. And it's not underestimating that from that social value perspective. I think the other point is, on a lot of these sites, there are brownfields land with it. And there's so many of these sites that we've looked at that are still landlocked, that have got potentially hundreds of homes. We're looking at sites now that have come back that we looked at maybe 10 years ago that are back. But there are opportunities as well, not to just deliver the heritage asset back to life, but also new build family homes. Yeah. And this is where I want to have more conversation. These could be single family rental homes. These could be social rent, combined then with that heritage. So we've just got to think differently now. Yeah. But those opportunities are there. And if everyone opens their eyes, they'll see them more and more. Yeah. And we have to all play our part in making sure we can bring them back.
Yeah. I think the reason this campaign is so important, and the emphasis that PJ Livesey placed on housing as being a game changer in some respects, is that heritage in all shapes and sizes, whether you're talking about buildings or whether you're talking about other things within our culture in the UK, it is often seen as the premise of people who suggest are a bit more of the chattering classes rather than the doers and the workers and the communities where these places exist. It's really important, isn't it, for us to make sure that people get the message. These buildings matter to communities. And actually, this agenda, it is not about elitism. It's not about particular people, particular sections of society. this is something that can make a huge difference for all of us.
Yeah, huge. If you think how many mills in the north are left rotting away, well, how can we reapproach these? You know, we've got to think differently now. But these buildings are there for all different tenures. They're there for all different ages. We have 90-year-olds living in some of our buildings. We have young first-time buyers living in our buildings. So it's for a whole different mix. You know, so I think we've got to really, really say there's a huge opportunity, and the community and people want to see this. We had one of our schemes in York, and we had an open day there for the community to come and see. We had 1,500 people through the door because they wanted to see these buildings and they want to be part of them. And like I said, these homes, there can be many different avenues we can go down with these buildings.
Okay. Final point from me. In terms of where this campaign and where these conversations go next, we've obviously been in touch with the select committee and talked to them about some of the ideas within that report. We'll put the link to that report for people to read if you're interested in doing that as well. It's a fascinating report, so I'd urge you to read it. But what do you see as the next stages to these conversations now and to this campaign?
Yeah. We've now got to put action in place. The conversations are really positive. Historic England, to me, are really very supportive of this, and that's very powerful because they are that statutory body protecting these heritage buildings, and they see that opportunity too. So that's a really great breakthrough. We have to also get the stigma away from what a lot of these buildings stand for, particularly when we're trying to attract investors. And the only way we'll do that is looking at that de-risking piece, which again is detailed in that report, how that can be really unlocked to manage how that funding piece will work. And then the next is getting some of these sites, and let's say, here's an example. This is what needs to be done. How can we take one of these developments and see how quick we can get this to actually mobilize and to deliver that much needed housing? And the more we can showcase that, then the more then this is going to get traction and see that it is really that opportunity as opposed to a constraint, Frank.
Brilliant. And from our perspective, we're going to be working hard to get some champions from Parliament.
That'd be great.
Particularly where they've got heritage buildings in their constituencies, and most of them will have.
Yes.
And then some mayoral involvement as well, because again, I think this should be part of their strategic planning. If you're looking at housing development, or indeed you're looking simply at refurbishing your high streets and some of your communities, then this needs to be part of the mix. So we're looking forward to the next stage in the campaign.
Brilliant. Thanks, Frank.
Okay. Georgina, great to speak to you.
Of course.
So that's been our latest in our Downtown episode of Spotlight on Downtown Strategic Partners. If you've enjoyed this, please give us a like. Have a look at some of the other podcasts that we've enjoyed with some of our private sector partners and members. And stay tuned for the next Downtown podcast, which will be along very quickly, I'm sure. Thank you.